All right, well, good morning and welcome to our latest Google Hangout session. I'm Lior Samfiru and I am flying solo today. My colleague Lumni Punja is a bit under the weather, so I will be talking to you and talking about our topic today on my own. First of all, welcome. Happy you could join us on this rainy morning here, January the 12th. And we're here to inform and educate as always. Any questions that you may have, always feel free to contact us. You can reach us at stlawyers.ca. You can check out the severance calculator at severancepaycalculator.com as well. Please feel free to ask any questions that you have today. This is a topic today that is very near and dear to my heart. I'll explain that later. I'll probably be getting on a bit on my soapbox a bit today when we talk about this topic. It's one that is problematic. I've spoken a lot about this topic. I've done interviews on TV and print media about it, and you know, I think you should all know about it. And the topic today has to do with what the Ministry of Labor does, the advice given by the Ministry of Labor to people that have lost their jobs. Why the Ministry of Labor gives incorrect advice, and because of that, causes people every single day to lose tens of thousands of dollars that they're legally owed. So I'm going to educate you as to why that happens. I'll talk to you about what actually you should know if you lose your job, and why you cannot and should not, under any circumstances, go to the ministry or through the Ministry of Labor, the Labor Board, when you lose your job. Very, very important topic. So let's break this down. Let's start from the beginning here. So probably a very natural, normal instinct for most people when they lose their jobs would be to go to the Ministry of Labor. I lost my job. I feel I was wrong. I don't know what my legal entitlements are. Well, I'm not just going to contact anyone. I'm going to contact the department in the government that deals with these issues, the Ministry of Labor. And sure enough, if you go online and you look up the Ministry of Labor, they very helpfully give you a 1-800 number you can call to talk to them about your situation. They have a staffed call center, people ready, willing, and anxious to take your calls. And for most people, that is the natural thing, and I can see why that would be. Why wouldn't you go to the Ministry of Labor if you have any questions? So that's where the problems arise, and despite the fact that this is a natural reaction, despite the fact that I understand why people would do that, and probably I would do the same thing if I didn't know any better, that is absolutely the wrong thing to do. And by doing that, you will be, not could be, you will be compromising your minimum entitlements. Now, or your legal entitlements. Before I tell you why, before I explain to you why that's such a bad thing to contact the Ministry of Labor and how the Ministry of Labor gives incorrect advice, I have to take a step back and I have to outline what legal entitlements are when someone loses their job. So let's break this down a bit. When you lose your job, you have what we call your minimum entitlements and you have your full entitlements. Your minimum entitlements are just a small portion of what you're actually owed. Your minimum entitlements, depending on the employer that you work for, may be 1 week of pay for every year of service. It could be 2 weeks of pay for every year of service, and that's it. For many people, it would be 1 week's pay for every year of service to a maximum of 8 weeks for most people. So your minimum entitlements, maybe if you work for 6 years, it's 6 weeks pay. But as I said, those are your minimum entitlements. Remember that word, minimum. Your full entitlements, we sometimes refer to them as your common law entitlements, can and are usually significantly greater. It could be 2, 3, 5, even 10 times more than that. And those are still amounts that are legally owed. Our courts have decided that. But those are your full entitlements, and they go above and beyond. Your full entitlements are based on 3 main factors: your age, your position, and the length of your employment. Usually, the longer you work, the older you are, and the more senior a position you have, the greater the entitlements, the more your full entitlements are. So the same person who worked for 6 years, whose minimum entitlements could be 6 weeks severance, 6 weeks pay, their full entitlements could be 10 months severance, okay, because of their age, their position, and length of their employment. So the difference could be, the delta could be between 6 weeks and 10 months in that individual situation. And obviously every case is different. So what happens if you call the Ministry of Labor? Well, here's the thing, and now this is all going to make sense. The Ministry of Labor can only and does only advise a person with respect to their minimum entitlements. Remember, the minimum entitlements being a small portion, a small fraction of what you are actually owed. That's all the Ministry of Labor does. So if you call the Ministry of Labor and you say, I worked for 6 years. They let me go today. What am I owed? They're going to say 6 weeks. They're not going to say at least 6 weeks or a minimum of 6 weeks, or maybe you could be owed more than that. They're going to say 6 weeks. So here's what happens. You call the Ministry of Labor. They tell you, I'm just using the 6 weeks as an example. They tell you 6 weeks and say, well, okay, well, my employer offered me 8 weeks. That's more than what the Ministry of Labor told me. So I guess that's a good offer. So I'm going to accept the severance offer from my employer, not knowing that you should have gotten 10 months pay. You should have gotten 5 times more what you've been offered. But because you called the Ministry of Labor, because you listened to the Ministry of Labor, they gave you what, you followed that advice, which is the normal thing to do, and now you've lost. Very common thing. Debated this issue many times. All I've told them is, I don't need you to give legal advice. You don't need to tell people what their full entitlements are. What you should be doing is telling them, here's your minimum entitlements. You may have additional entitlements. But if you only tell them entitlements and those entitlements are just minimums, most people are going to listen to that and they're going to follow that, and that's going to be the situation. So, here's another classic example. I've worked for a company for 25 years, Ministry of Labor. It's a small company. They let me go today because of a restructuring. What am I owed? Well, you know what the Ministry of Labor is going to tell you then? 8 weeks pay. Now remember, a week's pay per year to a maximum of 8 weeks. I worked for 25 years. They let me go. Ministry of Labor is going to say 8 weeks. Well, what am I actually owed in this scenario? I could be owed as much as 2 years pay, as much as 24 months pay. So again, that's 12 times more than what the Ministry of Labor says. And this happens every day. Why? Why does the Ministry of Labor do this? Well, they've simply taken the position that that's all they have to tell people, that they're not obliged, they're not obligated to tell people more than what their minimum entitlements are. And I don't disagree with that, except they should be telling people that they have other entitlements, and for that, they can go look elsewhere. So this is very, very important. But it gets worse than that. It gets much worse than that. Because you may say, okay, I got advice from the Ministry of Labor. Now I'm going to file a complaint with the Ministry of Labor because my employer didn't give me what I was owed. So you file a complaint with the Ministry of Labor, and then you realize, well, wait a second. Now I realize that I don't want to go to the Ministry of Labor because I listened to Lior and I understand that I'm actually owed a lot more. Well, guess what happens? By filing a complaint with the Ministry of Labor, that's it, you're stuck, you're done, you're over. You cannot withdraw that complaint. You cannot say, well, now I'm going to pursue my full entitlements by other means. So let me give you an example that's going to make this all make sense. You file a complaint with the Ministry of Labor to get your 8 weeks pay from your employer. And yeah, the Ministry of Labor could potentially help you do that. In the meantime, you realize, well, wait a second, I'm not just owed 8 weeks pay, I could be owed 24 months pay. So you say, okay, forget about the Ministry of Labor, let me maybe hire a lawyer. You can't. Because you filed that complaint with the Ministry of Labor, you're now stuck. You can't withdraw that complaint. You can't pursue your 24-month entitlements. You're stuck in that process, the result of which may be that the Ministry of Labor gets you a tenth or less of what you're owed. So in that scenario, and by the way, that scenario happens every day. That scenario, the person would have lost tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's one case of many cases that happen every single day. You understand the problem now. You understand why it's so bad to appeal to or to go to the Ministry of Labor and the Labor Board with termination situations. You will lose, unfortunately, you will lose your entitlements, not necessarily lose the case. You will be stuck in a process. So what do you do in that situation? Well, what should you be doing? The most important thing that someone should be doing is finding out exactly what their legal entitlements are. That's the number one scenario. That's the number one thing you have to do if you lost your job. You want to know how much you're actually owed. We know now that we cannot go to the Ministry of Labor. We know now, based on what I've been telling you for the past 10 minutes, that the Ministry of Labor can only give us information with respect to our minimum entitlements. Again, a small portion of our full entitlements. So what do? Well, you can always call an employment lawyer and get that advice, but I've tried to make it easier. Because I want people to have access to that information, I created a tool called the Severance Calculator. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it already, but I'll mention it again in this context. The Severance Calculator is an online tool. It's free. It's easy to use. It's available at severancepaycalculator.com. And what it does is it tells you how much you're owed, how much your full entitlements are. Not your minimum entitlements, your full entitlements. So you input your age, your position, and the length of your employment, and you find out exactly whether you're owed 6 months pay, 12 months pay, 24 months pay, and anything in between. It's the only way, other than calling a lawyer, of course, that you can get that information. Now, what's interesting is the Ministry of Labor also has a severance calculator. So if you go online and you look up severance calculator, you'll find the Ministry of Labor severance calculator, and you'll find the severance calculator that my law firm has created. And the results you're going to get are going to be completely different. And hopefully by now you understand why. The reason why they're completely different is because the Ministry of Labor calculator is only going to assess and provide information with respect to your minimum entitlements. That's it. So if you go to the severance calculator, it's going to calculate a week's pay for every year of service, as if you need that help, as if you can't calculate that on your own. In any event, whereas if you use the severance pay calculator that my firm created, you get an assessment of your full entitlements. It's extremely important to remember that. Let me tell you about a case that I had a couple of years ago that I was involved in. Actually, got some media attention. So it was about 3.5 or 4 years ago. A company was shutting down, and it gave all its employees 8 weeks notice. Two of these employees, both of which have had over 20 years of service with that company, contacted the Ministry of Labor, called them up in that 1-800 number. And they said, okay, we've been with this company for 25 years. This company, only about 15 employees, and the employer's given us 8 weeks notice of termination. Is that good enough? They were told, yes, it is. It is good enough. Okay. So these people did what most people would do in this situation. They believed it. And they didn't do anything about it. Fast forward about 1.5 years later, they hear me on the radio. I do a radio show on AM 640 and A900 in Hamilton and in Ottawa as well. And they call me. And they say, well, wait a second, Lior. Are you saying that we should have gotten more than the 8 weeks notice? And I said, absolutely. You would have each been owed anywhere from 20 to 24 months pay, not 8 weeks. So problem, because in the meantime, in that 1.5 years, the company's gone out of business. So there's no company anymore to pay them that severance. So there was a company, they got 8 weeks notice. They didn't pursue the matter because the Ministry of Labor told them not to. And in the meantime, guess what happens? The company's out of business. So what we ended up doing here is we ended up taking legal action against the Ministry of Labor. We sued the Ministry of Labor for negligence. We said, Ministry of Labor, it was your fault that these people lost out on tens and tens of thousands of dollars because you told them 8 weeks is good enough, which it was not true. It was wrong. So that's when there was media attention about these cases. That's a couple of years ago. We settled both of these cases now. And I am still hoping that the Ministry of Labor will change its practices, that the Ministry of Labor will understand that it has obligations. It cannot mislead people. Can you imagine you lost your job, you're worried about paying your bills, you're worried about how you're going to survive until you find another job, but you're owed, let's say, $50,000 that you could desperately use, and because the Ministry of Labor is negligent, you end up not getting that amount of money? That's horrible. That's a terrible thing. And that's exactly what I'm talking about today. That's what I've spoken about this topic before. I don't want anyone here to fall in that trap. And if you're listening to this presentation today, tell others about it. Tell your friends, tell your family, because it may be their reaction as well if they lost your job to contact the Ministry of Labor. And if you know, take it upon yourself to let them know, don't do that. You don't like me, fine, don't talk to me, but talk to someone. Get legal advice, find out what your legal entitlements actually are. Don't contact the Ministry of Labor. Now, I've been hard on the Ministry of Labor in this presentation, but I want to make it clear that what I'm talking about is only with respect to termination of employment. The Ministry of Labor can provide useful advice with respect to other aspects of employment, just not with respect to termination. So, for example, as relates to overtime, hours of work, vacation pay. The Ministry of Labor is absolutely the right place to go to ask questions, and even complaints. They do a good job. That's what they can do, not with respect to termination of employment. Another area you may be able to go to the Ministry of Labor for if there's an unsafe work environment, If your employer is making you work in an unsafe environment, you can file a complaint with the Ministry of Labor or have the Ministry of Labor come in and investigate. If you refuse to do unsafe work, all of those things are absolutely fine and appropriate for the Ministry of Labor to deal with. If there's unpaid wages, your employer didn't pay you for last week, or the check your employer gave you bounced, potentially the Ministry of Labor can help you with that as well. So they do play a role that's important. I'm not trying to diminish that. What I am saying is, under no circumstances should anyone get advice or, God forbid, file a complaint with the Ministry of Labor if they lost your job. It's a terrible situation if you lose money because the government gave you the wrong information. And this still happens every day. You don't believe me? When we get off this presentation, call the Ministry of Labor, give them this fact scenario. Tell them you've worked for a company, for a small company for 20 years, and you were let go, and ask them what you're owed, okay? They will tell you 8 weeks. Then go to the severance calculator, severancepaycalculator.com, input the same information. You'll find out that depending on your age and the type of job that you input, you could be owed anywhere from 16 to 24 months pay. So you don't believe me, try it yourself. Very, very important to understand that. So hopefully this makes it very clear. But again, I'm just one voice. There's more people here listening. Spread the word. Tell people about it. This is an extremely important thing. We speak with people every single day that have lost their jobs. I actually had a call about 2 months ago. I was in fall from someone who called me after he called the Ministry of Labor. So the Ministry of Labor told him that in his situation he gets 4 weeks pay. I told him no, it's 6 months. So he was asking me, well, how can the difference be so significant between what you're saying, Lior, and what the Ministry of Labor is saying? So I explained to him, just as I did today here, the difference between minimum and full entitlements. But you know what? He could not wrap his head around it. He could not believe or understand that the Ministry of Labor can tell him a month's pay, and this lawyer is telling him 6 months pay. So he ended up not doing anything. He ended up taking the Ministry of Labor advice. He just couldn't believe that there would be such a difference. And as best as I couldn't get him to understand. So that person, unfortunately, lost out on tens of thousands of dollars. There's people like that every day. Don't let that happen to you. Be smarter than that. Be educated. If you have any questions, always reach out and call us. Go to the severance calculator and be informed. Hopefully this all makes sense. If any questions arise, you know how to reach us. You can always reach me at Lior, that's Lior, at stlawyers.ca. You can check out the radio show that I do. You can go to the radio show webpage, employmenthour.com. Come chat, email, call. Happy to talk always. And hopefully you understand now why the Ministry of Labor can't help you and what you should be doing if you lose your job. So that's what I have for today. Thank you very much for listening. Stay warm, stay cozy, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.